Hello and welcome to another talk for the open day of the College of Functional Wellness. I am very excited to be joined by the amazing Todd Roache. Todd is, where do I start? Todd is the most amazing coach. He has coached me personally. I love his approach. I am excited to be doing this because I think you offer such a unique way of coaching, and you've got a unique style of the way that you work. And I want this talk to be an exploration of what is coaching, why is it important, why do we do what we do. I'm also really interested in the differences of how you work and how you were trained, and how I work and how I was trained, and how we do our training in coaching. So Todd, welcome. I'm really excited to be doing this. Are you happy introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about your background?
I am very happy. First of all, I think I just need to share a little flutter in my heart. I feel that was an emotional welcome. And also, I just need, I just need to share the fact it's absolutely boiling in the room I'm in. So if I seem to get increasingly hot over the day, over this conversation, it's not because you're making me sweat by your interview. It's probably like the sun is literally making me sweat.
Isn't it glorious? I think I'm sat in 34-degree heat at the moment, and I love it. Hotter the better.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the heat, but I'm a fan of conversations like this, so I'll stop dilly-dallying and get into it. So where am I coming from? What's my history? How did I get to coaching? Is that the gist of this question?
Yeah, go for it.
So I started out in music. I would like to say in a semi-famous band. And I think the reason that's relevant is because, like a lot of people, I went through a phase in life thinking, oh shit. Oh, sorry, Laura, beep, beep.
Bring on the language.
I'll try to swear from this point onwards. Oh, sugar. I'm doing something that no longer feels right to me as a human. And I feel like that speaks to a lot of people I meet who end up being coaches, something about where they're at in their journey. The glove no longer fits in their purpose. For me, that happened in my music career. I then shifted into music and healing. So I came out of the fame game, let's say. I went into music and healing for 10 years in CAMS, which is Child Adolescent Mental Health Services. And that's where I was holding space for suicidal teenagers and all kinds of mental health, actually, for a long time. And I really got into the rapport and the space holding, a lot of things that I think are in coaching. Also, the sense of that it's more about the relationship, the way you are with someone and the way they are with you, and the trust of that bubble that creates change. But after a while, I was like, okay, well, those are the people who are in the hospital. What about all of us, Joe Blogs, day-to-day people? We're all kind of not quite with it either, but it's not that we need therapy or some really intense intervention. But what's the thing you go to when you want a bit of help with this crazy thing called life? You know, what is that thing that isn't like, okay, we need to have a really intense conversation about past abuse or anything of that nature? And I thought maybe that's that coaching thing. So I found my way to coachmefree.com and had some free coaching with somebody who actually was a student at the school I then trained at. And I think what happened in that coaching conversation is I found, wow, this is exactly my next evolution. I'd love to practice in this space where I'm not working in intense mental health environments, and where I haven't got a guitar on my lap, just having but beautiful, raw, honest, intimate conversations about life in supportive ways. I found that as a medium, but I also found a place as a client where I could really flourish and blossom and be like, wow, this coaching thing is awesome. It helped me as a person. It still helps me. And as a practitioner, I thought, okay, that's for me. I signed up to that course. It's the most money I ever spent on myself. I didn't think twice about it.
And never look back.
I never look back. Yeah, and since then, I mean, I could ramble on and on and on. I think when we spoke before this conversation, I was saying you're gonna have to rein me in, Laura, because any question you ask me, I can do that for ages.
Yeah, bring on the free for all. So, can you? These talks are mainly for people who are thinking about, they're probably in the situation that you were in, and the situation that I was in. I was in the corporate world in London, just going, this isn't what I thought life was meant to be about, and fell deeply in love with my first passion was nutrition. And then as I delved deeper into that rabbit hole, I discovered that actually I could have the perfect diet, but actually I'm an emotional wreckhead. So unless I went and actually dealt with how I responded to the world, then I was never going to get underneath my symptoms. So that was my next rabbit hole. And so this talk is for people in those situations who maybe are already practicing maybe an alternative therapy or are thinking about doing this as a career, and like, what is coaching? Do I want to be a coach? What is involved in the training and also in what you do as a job?
Just a small question then.
Over to you.
What is coaching? Well, I think I'll start with this. The interesting thing I think about the word coaching is it's one word and it means so many different things to different people. So you ask Tony Robbins, what's coaching? And he'll be like, coaching is motivating, coaching is shouting, coaching is being a giant 7-foot man and playing really loud music for 10 days straight, no sleeping, and that is some people's version of coaching.
It's not mine, my poor nervous system. I can't do the shouting.
And that can be quite directional, quite almost, some people think coaching is motivational speaking almost. It's up to you, the coach, to tell me the inspiring words that changed my life. Whereas the coaching philosophy that I come from is more aligned with the ICF, which is the International Coach Federation. And that's really coaching as a conversational change facilitator. Someone's come into the space and they want to evolve in some capacity. They want to explore themselves, evolve on an emotional level, perhaps their awareness, or they want to achieve some kind of goal or some kind of outcome. They want to get from some kind of A to some kind of B, whether that's, I want to change from this job to that job. I want to change from not accepting who I am to blossoming and going off and becoming the Tantra teacher I've always wanted to be. Some kind of shift of some kind of exploration. And that can be practical, or it can be a little more existential. But I think the thing that differentiates it from, say, the therapies is that the question is more like, what do I want to grow into? What potential is within me that I need help fulfilling? Not what do I need healing? What is in my past that I need to recover from? What is in my past that is holding me back? And I think that something perhaps you pointed to is something that was holding you back. That would be something that you would go to therapy for. So as a practitioner, what kind of space do you want to be in? Do you want to be in a space where you're going into the past and you're holding those sort of intense, robust spaces for those emotional recovery, that healing? Perhaps it's trauma, perhaps it's addiction, self-harming, whatever it is. There's lots of types of therapy, obviously. Or do you want coaching, which is more future focused? It's more like, where are we now and where do we want to go from here? And the idea with coaching is that you're coming into the space, ideally, with some kind of functionality already. There's nothing ideally holding you back, and you're kind of ready to build on what's already there. Yeah, you might be a bit meh. You want to go from meh to yeah, but you're healthy enough to engage in the process and start creating the life you want to create, or the person you'd like to be.
I think that's really interesting, because we as a college, we offer 3 different training pathways. We've got our functional wellness, which is absolutely taps into what you're saying, which is this is where I am today. I want to get to a place of feeling better. And you as a coach are going to help me with that pathway. I have to walk it, but you as a coach can help me. We have our functional kinesiology, and because of where kinesiology has come from, we have a few of those therapy, looking at the past, looking at the stuff that's holding us back, being able to release some of those emotional difficulties, some of those traumas from, and particularly kinesiology is quite powerful for releasing it from the body, because we work quite physically with the body. And then we have our holding space, which is our emotional coaching, which is where, because we talk about this, I mean, I've seen loads of, I love going to therapists, I love going to coaches, I love having the experience of working on my well-being. And something I've really noticed is that a lot of therapists who train in, say, nutritional bodywork or some of the traditional therapies were really bad at holding space. And when I say holding space, and this is where I think you are absolutely brilliant at, and I'm really interested in how you develop this as a skill, as a muscle, is holding space is the ability to be able to sit with someone in whatever emotional fallout they're in, and to be okay with it. Because my experience of going to some of the other therapists is that Emotion can make people uncomfortable. Other people's emotion can make people uncomfortable, can make therapists uncomfortable. And it was, I remember seeing this acupuncturist who tried to just stick me back together. He was just like, oh, stop crying. This is the end of the session. And I was like, oh, I was in this big fallout, and I was sort of shuffled out of the room. And I was like, how is it that it is so difficult to sit with emotional difficulty, and how do we as practitioners, or how as us as coaches, because you're going to get it right in a coaching facility, in a coaching space, you are going to be touching on things that people find really difficult to talk about. And how do we allow it? How do we allow them to be in their process? There's another massive question. I actually think, like, I've done a few of these talks now, and I'm having a marvelous time, and I've clearly warmed up to them. But I think this is just the biggest subject area to cover. So here's a massive topic. Off you go.
Okay. So
how do you do it? How do you get?
I think that's a huge area, and we'll go into it. And who knows? I think there's a whole PhD in that. But let's see what we can extract from a few minutes. I'm going to just kind of as that's an emotional question, let me just kind of feel into my heart around it. I think I totally hear what you're saying. A lot of people do almost panic when somebody cries in front of them. And I think that can come from lots of places. And one place I've seen it come from trainee coaches, because from the coaching school I train at, is something's gone wrong, I need to fix it. And I think there's something really beautiful, and this is something the ICF I think do well, which is when we truly regard our client as creative, resourceful, and whole, we already come into them with that regard that they don't need fixing. They're not in fact broken. They have all the resources they need inside themselves to self-actualize, to find their own answers. And those answers might actually be behind the very tears that are happening. And when we trust them to pick themselves up, when we trust them to have the internal grace to find the edge of that quicksand and pull themselves out, then we don't necessarily feel the need to reach in and rescue them. And I think part of it is that trust. You're a human and I trust you. In fact, I would go beyond that and say, I trust us, because that's what, speaking about the relationship, say me and you in coaching, if there's times when you got emotional, I'd have to trust you, and you'd have to trust me. And we'd also have to trust the process of coaching. So there's sort of having that relationship container, I think, is also important. So there's trust in the picture. That I think is a big part of it. I'll bounce that ball back and then you can bounce it back.
I love it. One of the things what I love what you just said is trusting that the person you're working with is whole. I just really want to let that land, because I think if I look back at my own personal journey of when I first started exploring therapy and exploring my health, there was this fundamental belief that on some level I was broken, and I needed to find the practitioner, the therapist, the coach that was going to fix that bit. And I think that this rescuing, I think it's really, really important to get underneath our motivations as coaches, as therapists, to go, well, what is it that I'm bringing to the space? What is it? And I know from my own experience that, like, I came into this quite a rescuer. I love to rescue. I love to help. It made me feel really wanted and needed. But I wasn't helping anybody because I was assuming that they weren't whole. I was assuming that I knew better than them. And so when I was able to go and do the work around why I was rescuing, so the emptiness of I've got to be useful, if I can get underneath that, then I can come to my clients as a whole individual and see them as a whole individual without the agenda of I know best and I know how to fix you. I think that is, and I don't know how many therapies, alternative therapies, how many, I'm not sure about coaching courses, but really teach that. It sounds like it was part of your process with your qualification, but I've done lots of different alternative therapy qualifications. I think it's quite rare, especially in the alternative health industry. But it's core, right? It's when we are, I think the only way that we can become a really great coach or practitioner is if we clear our own rubbish.
Absolutely. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think there's something interesting about clearing our own rubbish and teaching. You can go on a coaching course and you can be taught, but at some point you also have to have that own internal self mission, self-discovery, self-voyage. You have to know thyself. You have to be able to feel your own internal threads. If someone's pulling, and you're like, oh my, oh, I feel the urge to rescue this person, but I don't have to because I trust them. Whatever it is, it's almost like you're a kind of puppet in the space, and the way they behave might pull on you, but you have to know yourself well enough to not react, to be just, the term I really like, and I feel I use, is the space in which. I'm holding the space for the conversation, and I know myself so well internally that I hardly ever get triggered. And the only reason is that that's just because I'm so messed up and so dark that I spent so many years crying over about the hideous monsters inside me, that I had to learn to love them. So I spent so many years lifting the rocks up inside me, go, what's under this rock? Oh my God, it's crazy. What's under this rock? This rock. So in that respect, there's not many surprises. So when somebody cries in the space or whatever it is that they do, most of the time, almost all of the time, I'm not getting activated, let's say, and I'm not polluting the space, as far as I know, because obviously I'm still developing, I might be polluting unconsciously. To the best of my ability, I'm not polluting the space. And I think a lot of it comes from that. I'm able to, what I call, be transparent. And I think if I bring my mental noise in or my emotional noise in, and I can't steer the own vessel of me, then, it's potentially more likely that little car of Todd is going to crash into the space and make a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the holding space, that we are the container to allow, because I know my work with fear and anxiety. I love to work with fear and anxiety because my understanding of it is that it needs a container. And so when I'm able to hold that as a practitioner in my clinic, and my client is able to feel that there is a safe space that is being held, so then, because the fear will catastrophize. Oh my God, then she's going to think this and this is going to happen. And then, but when there's a safe space to allow fear to go, okay, that's all right. I can feel that, and I can feel that, and I'm here, and it's all right. It's okay to be me. I think that's when transformation happens. And there's two things that I wanted to talk to you about what you just said. I think one of the reasons that I really wanted to work with you is when you talked about the darkness. And I think this self-exploration, when we're able to, I know that when I got to a stage in my process where I've been a good girl for so many years, and then I got to this stage where I was like, oh my God, look at all those rocks with all this horrendous horrificness underneath, and can I even go there, and can I look at it? But, and I don't know if this happens for you, I know this happens in my clinic, if there's something that I can't look at in myself, it will absolutely come and sit in front of me in the clinic. And that trigger that you talked about, when a client comes in and they're talking about something, and this is what I teach in our school, is if you feel that trigger, if you feel upset by something that a client is saying, if you feel anger at something that a client is saying, there's your work. And if you don't go and deal with that, it will just come in again and again and again and again until you go and do it. And that's the glorious thing about this job, right? Is that it just keeps calling us into a better version of ourselves. Because if I'm not prepared to go there, how the hell am I going to be able to hold a space to allow someone to go there? Right? Those the triggers. I loved what you said about the triggers, and I loved what you said about the darkness, this understanding that we are whole. But some of the wholeness is really grubby, right?
The reason I'm laughing, that's the laugh of joy. I don't know if that's coming across, because I'm so, part of my face is so simultaneously in the mud of grub while simultaneously in the mud of light, that I don't even judge it as grubby. Like, I almost I could flip it. And I think that's the thing. I think that's one that is about the nature of the space I hold. Some people say, well, the nice stuff like love and that's nice and acceptable. And this dark, grubby stuff, that's less acceptable. Whereas to me, and this is a spiritual stance, perhaps, they're all divinity. They're all worthy of love. And when in my own explorations, I came to some, and I might get emotional saying this, I came to some realization in my own very challenging journey and continuing journey to self-love. No one gets left behind. There's no part of this complex inner ecology community called Todd that is going to get left unloved, because there just isn't. And I realize more and more, I start to feel like, you know what, why did the universe, whatever fate, that in my belief system, dump so much of this stuff in me? It almost felt like, why have you put so many stones in my allotment? He's got one stone and my allotment's barely got any soil in it.
It's a beach.
Exactly. And I feel like there's something in that, like it's made me do the work. It's made me do the work. So much so that I think my superpower is now loving the unlovable, only because I have to do it in myself. So yeah.
I have written that down. I am literally going to have a t-shirt made of that. No one gets left behind. And one of the things that we explore in our emotional work, this is part of the training for functional kinesiology, but also holding space, is that we look at these different sides of ourselves, these different aspects. And it's a powerful part of the inner child work that we do, which is the children that we were that still are very much alive in us. These are the teenagers that are still very much alive in us. These are the angry, the grubby, the grief-stricken, or the joyous, or all these different elements of us. And so in so many respects, people can really shut those. I don't feel anger. I don't want to feel anger. It's a non-acceptable emotion. So I'm just going to box that up and put that away because I'm going to be a good person over here. But I love what you say. No one gets left behind, because you can't have all of the fluff if you don't let good old anger into the party, right? You've got to have everybody, all these different parts of yourself.
I think there's a lot to be gained from having everybody at the party. I think as a practitioner, that's when you can truly have this non-judgmental space. Because if you don't judge your own jealous git and someone comes in jealous, you can't almost not help but judge them, because jealousy is something you judge inherently. So I think that's why people like Jung, all those old school psychologists or whatever they were like, you have to have accepted your own darkness and your own societal taboos, whatever it is, to be truly non-judgmental. And I think there's something beautiful in that space. Not to say I was born like that. Like I said, I was very resistant. I totally identify with what you're saying about, I'm good, let's shut it all over here. I went through this real phase of Mr. Positive Affirmation, almost tried to polish up myself into some shiny version of Todd. And then what would happen is, there's like, have you seen Toy Story?
Yes.
There's like those like little spider with the doll's head on.
Yeah.
I would like think I'm totally, zen and clean and yay. And suddenly I get these feelings in my soul. Oh my God. Like I'd laid out the picnic blanket nice and clean, and all these little critters with this doll head would come on and like, oh my God. No matter how clean and pristine I try and make me, that's just not me. So I thought I either cut these parts out of me, or I just have to go on this real journey of self-acceptance.
The other thing I've discovered is those critters, the bits that we go, oh my God, I can't be with that. That is what makes us so interesting. I know when I was everything's fine. I had the positive affirmations as well. I really, and actually I became a much more interesting person when I started to like the subversive side of myself, when I was able to, okay, right, let's sit together, subversive Laura, and let's have this conversation, and in you get, and let's see if I can work with you. She's so powerful. But until we get to that place of being, there's also the lifting the curtain, because I spent many years not even realizing there was a curtain, but you do kind of go, okay, what's going on behind there? But that is where, like, finding a coach, finding a practitioner, finding a training that enables you to go, well, number one, there's a curtain, and number two, look at all of that wonderfulness behind that curtain that is going to make you, it's not even going to make you, because you already are it, you just don't realize it, right? It's bring it all in, and the whole person that you already are, it's about seeing it.
I'm loving everything you're saying there, Laura, and if I can jam with that, it's making me think about how this wholeness as a practitioner, for anyone watching who might want to become a coach or any kind of practitioner, in fact, I think it can do so many things for the client. What it creates to contain, I had a client this morning, we had a chemistry call and she came back today for a session, and I asked her, what about our chemistry call made you come back? Because she seemed very picky. She said she had loads of chemistry calls and she hadn't really chosen anyone. One of the things she said was, I feel like you can hold my bigness, and I feel like you won't judge me, and I feel like I can bring out any of my critters. But there's something about that bigness, because if we think about even that word, or even the space in which, if you're only really coming from just your light sides, you're only that. But I'm coming from my light and my dark side. And interestingly, I find I'm being all of it simultaneously.
Wow.
I remember
Huge.
I remember being on this training. I was running a training in Edinburgh, and I was really, super, super, super present. And someone came up to me and goes, "Wow, Todd, you're so smiley and upbeat." And I was like, I am, but equally, simultaneously, I'm enraged, angry, furious, horrible. I was everything I am all at once. And the way I see that is, if you think about presence, which I think is a massive benefit to the client, that container, but also that I'm really with you, that my eyes are shining on you, I'm 100% with you. Well, what parts of you are with me? If it was a light bulb, are we talking, and it had 100 watts available? If you're only coming from the light side, well, it's 50 watts, depending how much darkness you've got. But, the more of you that's on simultaneously, the brighter that light can be. And I think there's something about presence that can itself be a space holder, and can itself be a transformational, because it invites presence from the other person. And that's a super resourceful state for them.
Yeah, totally. And I think the clients, when they can feel that all is welcome in this space, whatever you say, because I've also been in spaces, I remember probably about 10 years ago going to a therapist, and I was going through a real experimental sexual phase, and she looked at me like I was nuts. She went, you do what? Really? It was almost, and I was like, oh God, so much shame. And when you're with a coach that has delved into the darkness in themselves, when they've explored all the different parts of themselves, then whatever a client brings to the space is welcome. And I think that is when you find that in a practitioner, or when you're able to do it as a practitioner, it's just gold, right? It's clients are looking for this, because clients are so often reject different parts of themselves. And so if they feel that you're going to judge it, then how on earth are they able to bring it into a space to be able to even feel the edges of it and name it?
Everything you're just saying there, that it's possible to design a whole coaching course and mention none of the things you mentioned. So the fact that you're talking about a coaching course, presumably the one on your, as part of functional wellness, balanced wellness, what's the brand? What is it? What should I be calling?
All of those. Yeah.
All of those. The fact you're even aware that there's a curtain and you're inviting those conversations, I think, is really special, because I think it is a part of space holding fundamentally. And I also love what you said earlier in the conversation, that's the great thing about being a coach or any kind of practitioner, but I'll speak as a coach, is because the more you do the work, the better your space holding gets, and perhaps the bigger your space holding gets, and the deeper it gets, and you get to keep all the work you're doing. So it's not like turning up for your job and you're like, oh, I need to upgrade the software for my company, who'll then fire me and they get to keep, you're upgrading yourself so that you can be a better practitioner. And then you get to live with that self. And a lot of people who become kind of coaches is some sort of self-awareness, self-development junkies anyway. So I think it's a really beautiful dance. I help me so that I can help you. And then, like you said, if something in you triggers something in me, then I go away and I work on that. So it's this constant journey of really self-development, almost as a lifestyle, which I'm quite passionate about as well.
Yeah, totally. And like, I know the journey that I've been on, and a lot of it has been triggered by my work, because it's walked into my clinic and I'm like, okay, right, this is big stuff, and I've got to go and figure out where I sit. This is where we recommend that our practitioners have supervisors, particularly in their first years. Is so important, because we're learning this profession and we're out on the front line, and we're human beings, and the triggers are just opportunities to go and deal with what comes up. So we recommend that we have supervisors. But I know that my work has absolutely grown me so that I've got to a stage now that, like, in my relationships, and now I'm a mother, and the dynamic that I have with my son is so different because of the work that I have done on myself, because of the work that I had to do, because of the practitioner that I wanted to be. So I think it's why I love doing this work so much, is that the ripple effect that it has, it's changed everything in my life as well as in my career. And a lot is so interesting as well. I think the emotional realm is such an interesting place to go down. And I love the structural side of understanding how the body works and the anatomy and the physiology. And we also did a bit of the, I've just done a talk on the energy work, and she talks so beautifully about the yin and yang, the wholeness, the dark and the light. And so listening to you and just having that talk sort of mirrored it onto it. But there is something so, the emotional work gives me goosebumps. Talking like this, exploring these topics, having this in my clinic, teaching my students, bettering myself so that I can be a better teacher and a better practitioner. I still get so like I'm plugged into something.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I love it. I love talking about this stuff. So I know that you offer coaching because I've done it. And you are also, you're a trained supervisor that support practitioners, therapists, coaches. Is that correct? To be able to
mainly coaches.
Mainly coaches. You take
Yeah.
therapists and practitioners as well, because I know that we, as a school, we are producing amazing kinesiologists are coming through our training program, and we recommend that this supervision is a part of something that they invest in as part of their clinic. Which I believe that you would offer as well.
Yeah, well, I would, yeah. And with the caveat, the thing I love about supervision is there's one branch of it where you're supporting the practitioner as a person, like we've always just been talking about. What's all the emotional stuff that's coming up for them, whether that's part of their self-evolution, but also any express and decompress they need to do. I've got this client that's really making me feel like this, or I don't even know if I can do this. I feel like a fraud sometimes. Just some safe place to just, in a way, offload that and process that. And then you've got the skill part of it. So as a supervisor, I couldn't help a kinesiologist say, oh no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, because I'm not a kinesiologist. But what I could do with them is find their inner poise and help them get back into balance, and help them just have that space to come back to, and just find the resilience and the inner resources and all of those things that allow them to have a sustainable practitioner career. And using coaching skills, or facilitative catalytic questions, I might be able to coach within the supervision out of them what they might need to go away and educate themselves on next.
Great.
So
I think with students, when you're studying kinesiology, and we call it the B's, so it's biochemical, emotional, electrical, structural. So you've got these 4 realms that we work in. And I think that there is something quite almost safe about the electrical, because you learn the acupuncture points and you are able to work with the energy fields of the body. Structurally, that is also, there is a right and there is a wrong. You test it. If it's imbalanced, then you fix it. I think where a lot of students find that it's more of a stretch for them is the emotional side, because there's so many different colors, there's so many different, everybody is unique and has a different expression, and like we talked about, that it can, like, we get triggered and we get, okay, how do I be with this emotion, how do I be with this experience? And that is something that we can teach structures around the emotional work, but until you are actually doing the work on yourself, or you're actually in clinic, then it's when it becomes really real. So this is why we recommend, if anybody's got a kinesiology question, they can come to me and Claire, but the actual emotional side of it, that's where supervision, I think, really comes into its own.
And there's something I'm finding increasingly with supervision as well. I'm not sure if I can even land this, but it's a feeling of like, when people are doing a job that really feels part of their calling, it begins to be in a really intimate expression of themselves. And that can be a really precious thing. And then it's like, how much of yourself, of your real heart, of your real energy, dare you let into this practice that you're learning here? And what's that dance between personhood and practitionerhood? and just kind of allowing, almost like we've been saying, where you can be more of you because you are a kinesiologist, and almost how much more of you can you be, and how does that enhance your kinesiology practice? And I think it's something really beautiful there, almost like an evolution of personhood, where this profession is helping me become the person I am, and supervision, I think, can help explore that, because it holds practitionerhood and personhood in the same containers, sort of facing each other in some respects, or intertwining perhaps.
I think another aspect of that is that when we find our calling, is that we just love it so much and we just want to do it so much that we want to be good at it and we want to keep doing it and we don't want it to be taken away or to fail. And that as a piece, I think, is really, really important to explore, because we fall in love with this career. I mean, I'm still in love with it after 12 years of doing it, 15 years of training. I'm still excited about, I still spend my spare time reading about it and learning about it. And so it's a love affair. And so there's such an emotional piece there with the career, as well as the actual dynamic of helping other people through their emotional process. So if we've got a practitioner or a student or someone who is looking to explore or find a coach, how can they find you? Where are you at? Have you got a website or social media? Or
I have a website. It feels like the first time I sort of said, go to my website on www.toddroache.com. I need a little jingle.
Tune in next week.
Exactly. But yes, toddroache.com.
Amazing. And I think you're on Instagram, aren't you?
I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn.
Well done. Glorious. Thank you so much. I feel really, really energized by this, and I love what you're saying, and I really appreciate what you bring to coaching. I love your unique way of just seeing it and doing it. And so thank you so much for doing this. I will see you soon.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.